This is an interview with Paul Dawson, Managing Director of Construction Projects with Elgin Community College. This interview is being conducted on July 13th, 2016 at Elgin Community College. The interviewer is Polly Nash and the videographer is Jack Weiss. Thank you so much, Paul, for joining us today and sharing with us your history with Elgin Community College.
You're welcome, Polly.
What I'd like to start out with is just a little bit about you, where you were born and when you were born, a little bit about your early history.
Okay, thank you. I was born October 21st, 1954, in a small town in northeast Iowa called Owine. It was a town of about 8,000, and it was a primarily railroad town, and my dad worked for the railroad. He worked for the Chicago Great Western that turned into the Chicago Northwestern Railroad. My mother was a school teacher. My dad was born in a log cabin in Alberta, Canada, of American parents, but he was born on a homestead. My grandfather was a farmer, and he was a soldier in World War I in the United States Army. My grandmother was a school teacher, and she taught in one-room school houses. My mother was born in rural Laurel, Iowa, which is in about the central part of the state. My grandmother also was a school teacher. She went to Iowa State Teachers College, which is turned into University of Northern Iowa. And my grandfather was a farmer also. And my mother's maiden name was Paul, and so that's how I got named Paul. My dad was a Lieutenant JG in World War II in the Navy. He was on destroyers. He went to officer candidate school at Columbia University in New York. He graduated from Central College in Pella and took a few graduate courses at Drake. He taught for a while and then worked for the engineering department at Chicago Great Western. My mother was a school teacher on and off, but most of the time when I was growing up, she just substitute taught.
So you have a lot of education in your background.
Right, I do. I have a lot of farmers in my background, too. I've got an uncle that's still alive up in Grand Prairie, Alberta, and all my uncles on my mother's side were farmers. And then when I grew up, I had a pretty idyllic upbringing. I went swimming every day, played baseball with my friends. There was a lot of kids my age that we played basketball in the basketball season, football in the football season. I was quite an accomplished swimmer. I became a senior lifesaver at 14, as young as you could be, so I could be a lifeguard at 14. When I was 14, a F5 tornado hit Owine. It had a twin tornado that hit St. Charles, Iowa, or Charles City, Iowa, I'm sorry, and it killed 13 people. It was very unusual for two F5s to hit in the same time period. It doesn't happen very often. And when I was 15, we moved to Ankeny, Iowa, which is a suburb of Des Moines. Both my sisters had left, and I was just with my parents. My dad left the Chicago Great Western. It had been absorbed by the Chicago Northwestern, and he lost his job, and he went to work for the Rock Island Railroad in Des Moines. I really liked Ankeny. The first summer after my freshman year, I worked for a landscaper for $1.50 an hour. I think about that, where I made $12 a day and $60 a week.
Those were the times.
Yes, they were. My sophomore year in high school was probably the best year of sports. Sports were my whole life. that year in football, my sophomore team was undefeated. We were 11-0. The junior varsity team that I played on was 3-0. I got to dress in the varsity too, so I was constantly playing football or sitting the bench playing football. And then also my town just started tennis. And believe it or not, I was the number one tennis player on my high school's tennis team, both singles and doubles, my sophomore through senior year. Then I turned 16 when I was a sophomore, and a friend of mine and I went into Des Moines and went to the YMCA and took the water safety instructor course, and I passed, which was as young as you could take that class, and so I could teach lifeguards at the time I was 16. And from the time I was 16 till the time I was 20, I was a lifeguard, which was a great job as a teenager. I graduated from high school from Ankeny, played football and tennis. I played basketball my sophomore year, but the coach made us all get butch haircuts. And if you can remember 1970, everybody pretty much had hair at least past their ears, and most of them had hair down to their shoulders. And to be walking around the malls in Des Moines with a butch haircut, you were pretty ostracized. And I wasn't that good a basketball player. I loved the sport, but Ankeny really had a good basketball team. And so rather than sit the bench my junior and senior year and get my hair cut, I didn't play. And then baseball, I needed to work and save money for college. I was also, my senior year, I was a lifeguard at a health spa. So I worked the winter of my senior year as a lifeguard also. I started liking drafting in 8th grade and took all the drafting I could in high school because I really enjoyed it. So that started my love of architecture. So I became an architecture engineering major at Iowa State. And so I started with that and went through my freshman year. And the summer of my freshman year, I met my wife. And she went back to the University of Minnesota, and I went back to Iowa State, and I was the vice president of my dorm floor, and that meant I was part of the student government, and I got elected to the student government association, and that was a paid position, and I used part of that money that I got paid for that position to buy Joyce an engagement ring. My wife's name is Joyce. And so I got engaged November of 1974. We didn't get married till 4 years later, but we got engaged. And she decided to leave University of Minnesota. She was an art major and become an art education major at Iowa State. And so she came to Iowa State. And then about 2 years later, I think it was November of 1976, I had one instructor who really hit home by saying, and he was actually from Chicago, that the architect majors were not getting jobs. There were only about 40% that were getting jobs, and they were menial tasks when they were getting jobs. And he was kind of questioning why we were architect majors. And it was a very stressful major. You were in design, you were working 40, 50 hours a week and doing a lot of work. So actually my college roommate was an architect major, and he switched to construction engineering, and he was kind of questioning, why shouldn't I? And I started looking into it. So in November of 1976, with 3 1/3 years under my belt, I switched to construction engineering. And it's a good thing that it only cost about $2,000 a year with room and board and tuition to go to school, because I think at $40,000 a year, I don't know if my parents would appreciate me leaving with only, I wouldn't have made it out in 4 years, but still going a couple more years would probably not have been too popular with them. There, in the summers in college, I worked 1 year as a lifeguard, and then the next year I worked as a laborer on a construction concrete project. It was slip-forming grain elevators in Walnut Grove, Minnesota, which was close to where my wife was from, so I stayed on her farm that summer. That was my sophomore year. And that's where Laurel Ingalls Wilder is from. That's where Little House on the Prairie is actually the location. And so I got a little bit of the bug, even though I was still an architect major. And then the next summer, one of the guys on my dorm floor, his grandfather started Economy Forms, which is still one of the largest concrete forms company in the world. And that was the one time I used a friend to get a job, and he got me a job as a draftsman. And then the following summer, I worked close to Des Moines on slip-forming concrete grain elevators again. And it was dangerous work. You worked 100 feet in the air. I got hit by a clevis that fell 100 feet in the air that knocked my inner linings out of my hard hat. And the first year I worked, I almost fell 100 feet. So it taught me a lot about safety, which came into effect throughout the rest of my life. Safety was always a big factor in my life.
So there were a lot of things that were coming together for you in terms of directing your career. So all of these things sort of came together. Your professor saying there weren't that many positions out there, and your summer works all sort of came together for this interesting new direction in your career path.
Then, especially that was true in the summer of 1978. I saw a job posting where a small general contractor in Ames wanted a college student to be an estimator and a carpenter laborer. And so I went to work for him, and I worked in the summer. And that was the summer that I married Joyce. It was in August of 1978. And then I worked about 25 hours a week doing quantity takeoffs. And then Joyce was working to help support us. And then I went to college 2 more quarters. And I graduated in February 1979. Actually, it was late in that, and went to work right away in March of 1979. So I didn't even go to graduation. We were already packed up and moving. It was kind of interesting, my interview. I interviewed with PCL Construction, which is actually out of Alberta, which was kind of funny because actually the Poole brothers, which is the P in PCL, they had built a road near my grandparents, and actually my grandparents had met them. But by the time I went to work for them, it was a employee-owned, and they had dropped the Poole, and it was just PCL. But the gentleman that interviewed me, he had to catch a plane, and the guy in front of me was supposed to only take half the time, and I was supposed to get the other half. And he kind of messed me over and took the whole time. And so I actually had a walking interview, and I walked with the district manager from his car, or from the office to his car, and then he asked if we could go together to Des Moines where he was catching a flight. And I was married, and of course I couldn't do that because I couldn't have my wife. I had the car, and she couldn't find me if I would have gone to the airport in Des Moines. But fortunately, the dean of the program had recommended me to the district manager, and he took that recommendation and offered me a job. And that district manager was the guy that was in charge of the Mall of America. So he ended up doing a pretty good sized project, and was my boss off and on for the next 4.5 years. So I went to work in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and I started at the St. Paul Town Square project, which was 2 26-story high-rise buildings and 3 stories of retail. And I was a field engineer, which means that I was working in the field, and it was with what they call theodolite and level, and also with survey chains and that sort of thing. So I was doing the layout for the carpenters so that they could properly put the forms up and that sort of thing. Well, PCL got a job at the Twin Cities International Airport doing a new parking ramp, which was a six-story parking ramp with 2 double helixes. And a double helix is actually every other floor is where the ramp goes off onto the floor, and it was a pretty complex layout job, if you can imagine that. And fortunately, there was another superintendent that was a layout guy from Denver that helped me out with it. But I was on that project for over a year, and you can imagine being at an airport in December in Minnesota with no trees and the wind whipping across there at 20 below. And I was thinking, they have construction projects in San Diego, and I am an engineer. So it was pretty cold, and we finished that project. And for a while, I worked at the office and helped do what they call tenant finish, where you do retail stores and some office building floors and that sort of thing. And some estimators came from Denver to help the local office put together a project, and I was helping do some takeoff. And they liked me, and they asked if I wanted to go to Denver to do some takeoff and be an estimating assistant. And I thought that was all right because I didn't know where I was going next. And I told Joyce that, and she said, well, at least it's not Louisville, Kentucky, which is where they had a high-rise project. Well, about 2 weeks later, they told me I was going to Louisville, Kentucky. So I knew that wasn't going to go over too well with Joyce, but back then you kind of went where the job was, and the project was pretty impressive. It was called the Louisville Galleria, and it was, once again, 2 26-story high-rises. This was all glass enclosed, and the Galleria was actually a 3-story sloped glass enclosure on 2 city blocks with a 6-story department store. And it actually set a record for PCL by pouring 51,000 cubic yards of concrete in 1 year, and that is like 22 concrete trucks a day lined up on Muhammad Ali Boulevard in downtown Louisville, pouring every single day. And I was the only project engineer, and I kept track, and I worked 47 out of 52 Saturdays. And so I would come home, and I would do transmittals sitting and watching TV, and I would be at work at 6:30 in the morning and be there till 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. So it was a pretty rigorous time.
And what years were those? Paul?
That was, I started in December of 1980, and we were there until April of 1982.
Okay, thank you.
Then I went to back to Minneapolis and was an estimator and also a project manager on the Target stores, their headquarters. It was in a 51-story high-rise building that PCL built right on the Nicollet Mall. It's right across from, I believe, the Target field where the Minnesota Twins play baseball now. And Joyce just shudders when I tell this story. Just on a lark, the tower crane was at its tallest point, so it was a couple stories higher than the 51 stories. And PCL used to put their tower crane operator out on the end of the boom so that they could see the pick from the street, where most tower crane operators are where the boom meets the mast, and always have blind picks and just rely on radios. So I decided to walk out onto the boom and talk to the tower crane operator. So I'm walking this little ladder device out to the boom, and there's a cable that's rising as I go out on the boom, and I eventually have to lift my leg up and over, and it's probably 550 feet straight down. And I've got a sports jacket on and dress shoes, and I just go out there and talk to the worker. And I really, after my work as a field engineer, I was 100 feet in the air with a safety belt on, and I would walk column forms and that sort of thing. I really didn't have a fear of heights, but I really don't like tunnels that well. But I just did that just to kind of say that I would. And after I did that, I went to work for Minneapolis's largest drywall company, and they were a drywall fireproofing and plastering company. And I was assigned to the University of Minnesota Unit J hospital, which was a children's hospital. And at the time, it was the largest metal stud backup for brick. Most of the projects are block backup for brick, and they did a metal stud backup project. It was about a $5 million drywall project in August of 1983. And so it was a fairly large drywall stud project. And I went to work with them and worked also on the University of Minnesota football practice facility, and that was for Lou Holtz. And Lou was a really good guy. He had a party for all the workers, and he made sure that he shook everybody's hands, and he was a really good guy. And he only said that he would leave the University of Minnesota if he got the job at Notre Dame, and lo and behold, he got the job at Notre Dame. So I left Olympic and went to work for Gilbane Mortensen, which was the construction manager on that Unit J project. And it was a 480-bed hospital with 18 operating rooms. It was a $125 million job. It'd be well over $300 million now. And the ironic thing is that the trailer complex was situated right below where my wife's dorm room was when I visited her when she was going to the University of Minnesota. But it was, my first exposure to hospitals, and unfortunately, it wasn't always pleasant because there was kids with leukemia, and there was a neonatal infant center and that sort of thing. But it was quite a project, and I worked with a gentleman that was a all-pro tight end for the Vikings. His name was Steve Jordan, and he was a civil engineer from Brown, and he worked for Gilbane, who was out of Providence, which is where Brown is, and he worked in the off-season for Gilbane, and that was interesting. So I worked there until the project was completed, and actually worked doing warranty work for 6 months. So that kind of got me working like an owner, which was what I do here at ECC, working on things that go wrong after you turn over a facility. And that was somewhat nerve-wracking just because, if things go wrong in a hospital, it's never a good thing. I remember one medical gas pump that was not operating correctly, and somebody had to sit and push a button for 24 hours every 15 minutes so that it would cycle properly until they could get somebody from Kansas City to come up and fix it. So.
But while you were at Gilbane, then Gilbane won a contract to be the construction manager for some projects at Elgin Community College.
Yeah.
And can you talk about that?
Yeah. Before that happened, I saw a little more of the country. I left University of Minnesota and went out to Ossining, New York, and then to Fitchburg, Massachusetts, and then to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I built a high-rise for Northwestern Mutual Life. And then I came to, I was made project manager at Elgin Community College. And I came here at December of 1991, and I met with Dr. Shirley and Neil Baker, who was my boss. And it was a cold day, and I think Mike came in, even though it was winter break for the college. And it took a while for the college and Gilbane to sign the contract.
Wasn't this the first time the college had ever really even considered a construction management company? We had always done it ourselves, or the college had always managed construction projects.
Yes, and the way the Purchasing Act operates for the state of Illinois is that you can choose a construction manager, and that's what Dr. Shirley and the board decided to do. Actually, Dr. Heath was the president at that time. And they went for what they call a guaranteed maximum price. So they had negotiated that with Gilbane before the drawings were even done. And so we actually did what they call fast-tracked this building that we're sitting in right now, which most construction people don't recommend fast-tracking a theater. And actually, Gilbane didn't do very well economically on this building, mostly because of the sound requirements. A lot of the walls in this building are filled with mortar, not for structural reasons, but for sound reasons.
What does can you talk about what fast?
Fast tracking means that you send out bid packages for things like the earthwork and structural steel before you finish the architectural finishes, the mechanical, electrical. You start off with the early bid packages. You probably, I think, if I remember right, there were 24 bid packages on this project based on the specifications in the construction divisions. And probably the first 3 or 4 are concrete, earthwork, excavations, site work, that sort of thing. And so you start off with those, and then you negotiate with the architect to try to make sure that they design within the parameters of what you have in the budget. And, at first,
both ways, then.
yes, it's what they call a 3-legged stool when you have a construction manager and an owner and an architect, the 3 legs of it. And you're supposed to work in harmony. And I believe that the 3 partners did work in harmony.
So who was the architect? And this is the Visual and Performing Arts Center.
Right.
Who was the architect?
The architect was Burnage Castle and Associates, Charles Burnage and Chuck Castle. Daniel Adelano was the lead architect for the project. He had several other people that were interior designers, and other Walker Parking Consultants was the structural engineer. And we had some wetlands to the west of us that had to be dealt with when we put the parking lots in. We ran into a high water table when we put in Renner Drive and the parking lots. We hit the 8-inch water main and shot 40 feet in the air. We hit the main power coming into the campus, started the ground on fire. That was an interesting day. That was 13,000 volts. That was not one of my better days. Probably the worst day in my entire construction career was we had no roof on this project, and we got one of those 4-inch rains in about an hour, and the switchgear room in the drama building filled with water, and the switchgear was live. And I walked into the switchgear room, and my glasses instantly fogged. And I should have probably just called ComEd and had them cut the power to the entire site. But I called the superintendent of the electricians, which was in Ballard Electric in Rockford. And I sat in my trailer. This was a Saturday morning, and I could see a light bulb that was temporary electric, waiting to see if that light bulb went out, knowing that if the switchgear blew up, that we would never get the switchgear in time, and so we'd never complete the project in time. The electrician superintendent showed up with another gentleman, and we went into the switchgear room, and it had about 3 feet of water. He waded into the water and threw the main switchgear. And then we were in total darkness. We didn't have a flashlight or anything. And, there's construction debris and masonry all over the place. And I later found out if the water would have been a lot more dirty, he could have, electrocuted himself. And I met his 4 kids, and I probably would have died when I stepped out onto the metal stair the first time when I looked into the room. But that was probably one of the worst times. And we pumped out the switchgear and dried it out, and it was fine, and we went on. But that was probably one of the most harrowing occurrences in my 37 years of construction. So we get to the end of the project in January of 1994, and John Ziegler, who was the director of operations and maintenance, decides to take early retirement. He was only 57. And so Mike Shirley asked me if I was interested in applying for the job. And so I went home to ask Joyce what she thought, and I think she was pretty shocked because, we had lived in 9 states in 13 years, and now it was 15 years, but she kind of felt that we had put a lot of effort into my construction career, but she also was pretty upset that every couple years we were not aware of where we were going to live next and having to put up our house for sale and having to sometimes move into rental housing. And so she was open to the idea. And so I applied for the project, or I applied for the job, and I got it. And Gilbane also had the Business Conference Center. At that time, it was called the Business and Industry Instructional Center, the BIC, the BIIC. Now it's called the E Building and the University Business Center. At one time, it was only going to be about $7 million. And we had...
The funding for that project, was there, where did the funding come from for that project?
The funding originally was going to be $30 million of what they call Kane County Public Building Commission. And speaking to Dr. Michael Shirley about that, he had heard from Dr. Jack Murphy, who had been the CFO prior to Mike, who was at Waubonsie, about that program. And Waubonsie had used PBC money to purchase a building or to build a building in Aurora for Waubonsie. And so he and Charles Burnage had gone to the PBC and inquired about trying to get some money for the college. And basically they used the same forms and format that the Capital Development Board used. And I believe that the city used the same format down at Fountain Square in 1983. That was a Public Building Commission project also. And so they got $30 million, and then it wasn't enough. So they needed about $15 million for the Business Conference Center, and they went and asked, and they were granted it. And it was a great program for the college because Kane County would levy the taxes for the Visual Performing Arts and the BIC, Business Conference Center, and give the college the money to operate the buildings, and then also would keep some money in reserve for repair and renovation. So when I was the Director of Operations and Maintenance and Director of Facilities, if something needed to be replaced, a carpet or a rooftop unit or roof, all I had to do was, prepare an estimate and have an architect show that it needed to be repaired, and they would fund it. And I would just have to go to one of the monthly PBC meetings and prepare it, and then also when I'd need a check, I would just go and request a check. And when the bonds finally became due, I think the Kane County PBC sold us the buildings for $1. I don't think we actually even gave them $1. And then gave us what money was left in the repair and renovation funds, which was hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was a great deal. It was something that Dr. Shirley and Charles Burnage should both be thanked for, and Charles obviously got a couple of good commissions, but we got a couple of great buildings. I think that they are definitely a couple of jewels, kind of set the stage for the rest of the campus. The project manager for Gilbane was a gentleman named Don McCarthy, and he was my project engineer on the Visual Performing Arts Center, and he was actually one of the business development managers that sold Gilbane to the college, and he wanted to get out of that part of the business. He was a very sharp individual, and so a lot of local firms like Lamp and Sinet were and Shales, Seegren and Shales were contractors on both those buildings, so it helped the local economy, and it turned out to be great for the college and great for the local economy and architects. And then the next project that we built.
Before we get to that, and I think that's important, but I would really like to talk about your moving from your career as a construction manager, a project manager, to an academic environment. And I know you've talked a little bit about the interest in staying in one place and not moving every couple of years and not knowing where you're going to be living. But what were some of the other reasons and outcomes of moving from that original environment to an academic environment?
Well, the main reason that I left construction was what I told you before, was I got tired of the nomad living. And you asked how the break from construction to working at the college. The one thing that many people don't realize about construction is that when you're building something, you learn the details about what you're building. When I built a hospital, I learned what goes into an operating room, what goes into a radiography room. Same thing with the Visual Performing Arts Center. I learned, what stage right, what stage left, what a vomitory is, and then, the different things that go into a classroom. And also, a lot of what is built into a building is what you have to take care of in the future. You have to take care of roofs. You have to take care of rooftop units. You have to take care of architectural finishes. And in research for this interview, I looked, and on this main campus in 1992, before the Visual Performing Arts Center, we had around 333,000 square feet of buildings. The Performing Arts Center was about 147,000 square feet. So that was about half of the campus right there. So I knew that I'd already built, actually a third of the campus, but I knew that better than anybody else, a third of the campus. And, right now we've got 1.2 million square feet. So I know it's 3.5 times what it was when I got here. So I knew that I knew all the elements going into the building, the switchgear, the rooftop units, like I said before. Also, you have to deal with supervising people. I know how to handle unions. I had a dozen different unions on a project. I had 300 people on this project at one time. So, at the maximum in operations and maintenance, we had 120 employees. So I knew I had 3 times that number of employees, and they were probably a lot rougher than any employees I would have in O&M. I would say probably the difference is that the college and higher ed community has more intelligent people that have more intelligent reasons why they need something, which sometimes can be a little more challenging if you don't have the money to give them for what they need. But if you treat them with respect and treat them the way they want to be treated, most of the time you can work it out and help them. I think that was one of the big things that was on my side was I typically had enough money in the operations and maintenance budget that I could take care of problems. And I also knew how to prioritize problems. And I had worked through stressful times like the water in the switchgear room, the water main, breaks, electrical breaks, all sorts of utility breaks and other major incidents. So little problems that people try to make mountains out of, I didn't allow them to make mountains out of because I knew really what was important and what you needed to be excited about. I think that probably the difference was things like winter storms and when to call off school. And fortunately, I had somebody like Don Bauman that would watch the weather and call me and tell me at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, truthfully, where we were at on what we should do. And, Mike Shirley was pretty adamant that it had to be pretty bad before we called off school. So I think that was not as hard a transition. I think the hardest part was some of the things like the building automation system that I wasn't as familiar with. I know during the first performance in the Blizzard Theater, they had to turn the air conditioning on for the first time in February, and the rooftop unit ate a belt and it showered everybody with dust. And I just sat there thinking that usually the fire alarm goes off when that happens, and that was during Paul Heath's retirement party. And I'm thinking, not a good time to have the fire alarm go off. And fortunately it didn't, but I really didn't have any second shift engineers, and so that was stressful. The first week I was here, they had the Easter Seals telethon in the Job Lounge, which we called the carpeted lounge at that time. And they had it where they just hooked up wires to the panel in the library. And I had to work till midnight that Saturday, and so my wife's thinking, you had to work 6 days a week and midnight the first week you're working. Is that going to be how it's going to be every time? And the guy that was hooking up the electricity for the Easter Seals had half his hand burned off, which didn't give me a lot of comfort that he knew what he was doing. But it was kind of something that, once again, I realized that they'd been doing it that way for a number of years, so I was hoping they knew what they were doing, and it was for a good cause, and so I was all for it. And I didn't have to work till midnight the next Saturday, so it was a good thing.
You started out in one position, but since that time, since you were hired, you've had a number of positions at ECC. Can you walk us through what they were?
Yes, I started as the Director of Operations and Maintenance, and then they've kind of thought that was too restrictive, so they called me the Director of Facilities, and as that, then they could ask me to do a few other things, like for a while I also had the duties of facilities rental. So I got to supervise Kathy Wozniak and her group of renting the event center and the business conference center and the community room and Spartan Auditorium and all of that. And then at another time, I was the interim foundation executive director when they lost Alice Aiken and before Norm Madsen. And then...
and during that time, when you were interim foundation director, what were some of the things that were happening with the foundation?
Well, there were some people that were upset that Alice had been let go. There was also a real low in employee contributions. I think the employee fund ask was only like $9,000, and the year I did it, it jumped to $38,000. So I just basically tried to handle events. I didn't really have enough time to do a lot of expanding and do a lot of philanthropy or anything like that. But it was just trying to keep the brunch and the golf outing and the special events and the employee campaign, those things above water. And it was a lot more bare bones back then. There was only a couple of employees that were working for the foundation back then. And in fact, I think there might have only been the admin assistant. I don't think there was even more than just the one individual. So
okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. And then what else?
Then we got into what they call the managing director, which was, I don't know if that was I believe that was the Hay Group that started those titles. And at one time that was a dean's level title. And at one time I was actually number 4 in the line of succession. It was the 2 vice presidents, the senior instructional dean, and myself. And then once I became the managing director of construction projects in 2009, that position is a level 17, which is an associate dean's position. But that I am no longer in any kind of line of succession. That's all in the president's cabinet. But when we passed the $178 million referendum in 2009, in the past I had construction in my duties, and the $41 million referendum passed in 2001. I handled those construction duties besides my director of facilities duty. And it was decided that it would have been too much for me to do both. And now they have a lot more responsibilities as far as payroll and signing invoices, and it would have been too much.
So, Paul, can you talk about the construction projects that you have been responsible for since you have been an employee, including the latest large referendum, but also other major projects of construction?
Okay. It's good that we just got done doing a review for the Illinois Community College Board, and so I listed them, and the new construction was 3 pages long, and the remodeling was 16 pages long. So let me just start with the new construction, and this is in alphabetical and not chronological order. So, and it's alphabetical based on the acronyms that we use now. And both you and Jack remember that we're on about our third iteration of acronyms since 1994. I think we're on this acronym for a while because one of the projects that we did was wayfinding signage, which was about $2 million. That included all the interior signs, the exterior building signs, and 3 electronic signs, and then the main, what they call monument sign on Spartan Drive. So I don't believe that we have any plans for renaming any of the buildings other than the single acronyms. But let me start. Building A is the Health and Life Science building. It was completed in 2012, and it's kind of the jewel of the referendum. It was $41 million, and it was completed 6 months ahead of schedule. It was primarily the Health, Careers, and Biology department, and it's a beautiful building. And it was done by Lamp and Kluber Inc. The B addition was done in 2004, and it extended the administration wing. It was towards 2nd Street, which the A building actually was built on 2nd Street. And the B administration wing increased the size to allow the vice presidents on 2nd floor and HR, and also student services and admissions and counseling or advising on 1st floor, and testing and tutoring. It was done by Kluber and R.L. Sohol. The D edition was the math and science. The first one was part of the 1997 project, which was done as a capital development board project, and it was done by Ackerland and Burnage Castle, and it actually joined up the Business Conference Center, which is Building E, and Building D, and it's probably one of my bigger disappointments in that it did not create a very nice path to Building E, and we never have been able to get a very nice hallway on 1st floor. It's nice on 2nd floor, but it's not nice on 1st floor. And since then, we've built the renovation of Building D, which was completed a couple years ago by IHC and DLA, and we basically remodeled the entire Dahlquist, Lutzow and Associates, but it's called DLA now. It isn't Dahlquist, Lutzow and Associates.
Thank you.
They were an Elgin firm, and now they're out of Addison. But it basically took that entire addition and remodeled it to where it does not look like anything that it was in 1997. And the 2014 remodel did a great job of taking out old labs that were biology and chemistry, and the greenhouse. For the people that watch this in the future, there was a greenhouse at one time on the D building between it and the lake that was partially underground with a glass dome over the top, and there was 2 elevated classrooms on each floor that were removed, and there were complete chemistry and biology laboratories, and they were getting to the point where the galvanized piping were going to leak, and so it was good that we turned that into a math floor on second floor and administration floors with marketing and the print shop and police and IT on the first floor.
Do you want to talk about Building C, the library?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I did miss C.
Okay.
Thank you. I was going alphabetically, and I missed the library. Well, that's dear to Jack's heart. The library was one of the pinnacles of the referendum in that we had been written up in a previous higher ed or higher learning commission report as being inadequate. We are a library the size of a bad junior high, about 18,000, not because of the staff or the collection or anything like that. It was the size of it. And so we hired Dewberry and Associates, and it's about 67,000 square feet, and it's about $23 million. It's won a couple of awards. It's silver LEED, so it's a green building. The one thing that I think is really unique about it is that both floors have accessible floors in them, and that you can put electrical outlets later on. Jack can tell you about how every time we remodeled his library, we would always try to put outlets on any kind of vertical surface so that you could put computers or places that you could plug printers or anything that needed power to them. And so it just was, something that is always needed to this day. I mean, we can go Wi-Fi with computers, but they haven't found anything that can go 120 volts that goes over the air. And it's got a beautiful reading room. I think it's one of the most beautiful spots on campus. It had a cafe, which in our day we would have never dreamed that they would have encouraged people to have food and drink in the library. Unfortunately, that did not pan out yet. Hopefully it will. It's held a couple of the brunches because it's such a lovely place, the receptions for the brunches. It was very needed for student small group study and group discussion areas. That was valuable space that was written up also. And so it also had tutoring areas, which the distance learning people got some valuable space out of the remodeling too. And it just is a really lovely space. I think that Dewberry, who evolved from Burnage Castle, they're a large national firm. They bought Burnage Castle. Then it became Philip Swagger and Associates. And Daniel Adelano is still with them. And I really think that it is another jewel on this campus. So thank you for reminding me. I had it highlighted here, and I missed it. Part of the Visual Performing Arts Center that we didn't talk about was the original fitness center that was built in 1993. I think that with the fitness craze, that's probably an area that we could increase the size of. I know Dr. Sam has discussed that. I don't think we have any more money to do that, which is unfortunate. The actual event center, that was done in 2005. That created an indoor walking track, and it is very popular with the public. They can come in here and walk. One of the questions that I saw you asked later on is what has improved. We couldn't have any kind of playoffs in our old gym because it was too small, and the 3 gyms that we have now are the envy of the Skyway Conference. K is a multi-purpose classroom. We started off by buying Lakeview Screw at 466 Renner Drive, and then bought the building next to it, which was a combination of U-46 and a plastics factory. What DLA Architects did when they combined those two buildings was this sort of magical, I think. They call that addition the piano because it's kind of shaped like a piano. And we had them. Shales McNutt was the architect. Their office is right across the street. I don't think I've ever seen a construction manager with an office closer than that. And we asked them to complete the first phase of that in 9 months, the classroom portion of it, in case we didn't get the SRC edition, the B edition done in time, because we only had 3 months. And they did it, but IHC got the 3rd floor B edition, which is now the 2nd floor, done in time, so we didn't need it. So the K building is something that's fabulous. So.
And that houses what area?
That was what was one time the Fountain Square. And we sold Fountain Square. Actually, we swapped Fountain Square for some land across Spartan Drive with the city of Elgin. And it was adult basic ed and English as a second language. And Fountain Square was 1908 Swan Department Store and a 1948 Sears Automotive and Department Store addition, and it was wood floors, and there was a lot of people that were very I guess they loved that building and they loved the environment, but it was difficult as a director of facilities to keep a building like that operational. So to have a brand new, a remodeled building like the multi-purpose classroom K, it was a pleasure. But it was one of those projects that were done in 12 months in record time, and it was done in a time when construction was under duress, and we got it at a heck of a deal. So,
thank you.
then we had 3 different M buildings. M East was done as part of the health careers. When they moved out, we remodeled the entire building, but before that, in the remodeling, it went through numerous things. The child care center, when the M addition in the middle moved out, we remodeled that part for a nursing lab. We put massage therapy and physical therapy in there, and then moved them into the D building. There were a number of things that we remodeled 2 or 3 times. The library, I know we remodeled at least once. Student services, we did 3 times. That was one of the things that, I guess, when you are a facilities director, as long as I am, you end up replacing all the roofs that you've done, and you sometimes remodel the same space or the same departments 2 or 3 times, and there were a number of instances. The bookstore, we remodeled 2 or 3 times. Student accounts moved a couple of times. We did those on some of those 9-day spring break wonders where we did them starting the Saturday after classes closed and finished the following Sunday. We did a student services $200,000 in 9 days one time, where we completely gutted it and put new carpet and new ceilings and new walls up in 9 days. And it was our own custodians that did the taping and painting that were part of that, and they worked tirelessly and did the final cleaning, and they were amazing. I missed the culinary arts, which was that was a challenging project. That was a Burnage Castle job when they were still Burnage Castle. Kluber was the MEP. Company named Klein was the general contractor, and they were not a very good general contractor. I remember Vince Pelletier was the dean, and 3 days before we were going to finish, he said, "We're not going to get done in time." And I said, "Yes, we are," and we did. And so it was a very, very challenging job. M Middle was, like I said, it was called the HBT. We put in a new child care area. There was a little dumpy building called the TNX, which was an industrial building that we combined into a classroom. You would have never believed that it was there. And since then, we've changed that building. That's now the greenhouse biology classroom building. The greenhouse is off of that, and we did that greenhouse for $450,000, which was amazing. It was basically a kit that we did it. Then M West was the ABT building. It was remodeled a couple times, badly remodeled. done by an interior designer that was not very knowledgeable, done on a shoestring. We basically gutted it, gave them finally some decent faculty offices, decent offices. I think that was the last of the power poles for the different computers. Once again, when you have computers without walls and without thinking ahead, you look at the Student Resource Center when I started, and you were the dean of the third floor. You had people in their offices that had laser printers and popcorn machines and coffee machines, and they had one 20-amp breaker between two offices, and they would pop the breaker all the time. But when it was built in 1970, they had no earthly idea that people would have 60 amps of need in their offices when they probably had a FM radio, and that was it. They didn't have any kind of maybe a calculator that they would have plugged in. But getting back to the SRC, that was one of the biggest accomplishments, I think, in my career. That building was not sprinkled. It wasn't fire sprinkled. Either was the ATC building, which is G. That was one of my biggest accomplishments, was getting fire sprinklers in all the buildings at the college, because there's never been a major fire at a higher ed building that's a sprinkler building in the United States, and that's very important. I think that really is something. So.
Good. And isn't there a project going on in Burlington that is virtually complete?
Yes, it's the Center for Emergency Services. It's been called the Public Safety Training Center, Public Safety and Sustainability Center, but it never got to be sustainable. It's going to be, it's open now, actually. It's going to be for the fire science, paramedics, and our 911, and hopefully it'll be a police and fire training. It's got a 3-story burn tower. It's got an apparatus bay that's going to be a fire tower, and it really hopefully will be utilized. It was another selling point for the referendum. One other building that I forgot was the old building, which is the building I'm in, and it was purchased with a 2001 referendum. It was a Elgin print shop, and it was totally gutted and remodeled. So.
And that houses what program?
It houses welding, HVAC, truck driving, the IST, which is kind of a maintenance programs for machines, machine tool.
Yeah. So you've done both construction and remodeling, managing all of those kinds of projects. Can you talk about what were some of the unique challenges that the original campus, which was buildings A, B, C, D, and then the gym and North Annex, those were basically the buildings that we had, what those presented for someone in your position? What were some of the things that you had to overcome that were unique to our campus?
The original buildings, believe it or not, one of the problems with it were they were built so solid. The second floor above the cafeteria and the meeting rooms was built with solid concrete. They were called dome concrete, so they're actually beams that are built out of solid concrete, and that's why you can't get telephone reception very well on that first floor, and that's why there's a roof above the meeting rooms, like the alumni room, community room, all of that. But that plaza was a terrible idea. The original plaza had a fountain. I mean, how stupid is that? I mean, especially when it had registration and records below it. And also the original plaza had 5-foot by 5-foot concrete pavers, so that you had to use a trolley system with kind of what we call the come along and inserts. You couldn't get just somebody to come by and pick them up. Like now we have what we call a Wausau paver, where two guys with a simple tool can lift them up and look for a roof leak or clean a drain. The old ones were hundreds and hundreds of pounds, and they would rock, and just the whole design aspect, where they thought people would be hanging out on the plaza with sitting there under an umbrella when the wind's blowing 40 miles an hour. I mean, the umbrella would probably end up in the lake in about 2 seconds as it whipped around there. Also, I don't think they planned that there was going to be this big a campus. There's not enough stormwater retention in that lake. That's why we've had to build other lakes on campus. I don't think they dreamed that we would have 3,500 cars on campus and 1.2 million square feet of buildings. There is a high water table on this campus. There were also, discussion that this might have been, a dump for the farm. There was, some, trashy peat areas, and we found pilings for a building when we were doing the Performing Arts Center. And there was asbestos in the early 1970s. They didn't stop using asbestos in buildings until the late 70s. In fact, we ran into some more doing the G building this summer that we didn't know about. And there was some in some of the blown-on insulation for the B building that caused us some delay and some money. But all of the pipe elbows in the original SRC and C building had asbestos in them. And the original boilers had asbestos. And then we have to work with the planter boxes that cost us over $200,000 to reline those. And we probably would have just got rid of them, but that would have even been more money. But the culinary department was actually using them to grow vegetables. And hopefully somebody will do that, or maybe the biology department's going to use them. But, once again, why on earth would you put planters on top of a building like that? The other thing is that this was our first opportunity to get some deferred maintenance money to do some of the masonry restoration and power washing out of the referendum, and actually we used what they call Fund 3, which is capital improvement money. They didn't use referendum money, but that was a lot of money. There's a lot of brick and a lot of exposed aggregate concrete that needed to be sealed and caulked and repaired, and it was close to $1 million. The original pavers to replace the plaza was $1.5 million, and then to do the roof again was another $900,000. So we spent about $2.5 million since I've been here just doing the plaza and the roof up there. Those walkways between the buildings, that has cost us a lot of money to make those, weatherproof and good. And they really haven't gotten much use since they stopped allowing smoking. They're probably the most popular when people used to be able to go out there and smoke. Same thing with the stairs that lead from the plaza down to the lakefront. They aren't that popular either. So, that whole plaza idea was not a good idea. The thing about the buildings is that they are kind of timeless in that they are, a very nice brick. It has set a design example to where we use the same brick, or at least that, same charcoal brick with a little bit of the same reds and oranges, and it has somewhat set a standard, and I think it's nice that we have some, homogeneous look to the campus to where it's not a mishmash of different architectural styles. So that is a good thing.
I was wondering about the original staircase that went from the second floor into what is now called the Job Lounge, or the carpeted lounge. Talk to us about the thinking and decision to remove that staircase.
Well, when we decided to infill the courtyard next to the Job Lounge, the other members of the steering committee thought that the monumental stair in that area took up too much space. And being a construction person, I recognize the art of the formwork of putting that stair in. It was actually quite a piece of work to get that to look like it did without honeycomb, and to make it look like it did and wrap around like it did was a piece of artwork, I think. Unfortunately, I was outvoted, and they just did not see the value in keeping it, and decided since the stairwell wasn't going to be needed anymore, because there wasn't going to be any more access from that courtyard where people were going to drive up to the flagpole turnaround like we were used to, that it wasn't going to need to be utilized like it was in the past, that there was a stair that was off of that lobby, and also the nicer elevator. That was another thing that was wrong with that original SRC, was that elevator was atrocious. It was not ADA approved. If you would have had somebody with a a broken leg. You couldn't even get on that elevator without backing into it, the old Student Resource Center elevator. But anyway, the monumental stair I thought was worth keeping, but that was one item that I was voted down by the steering committee for the referendum, and I can see now the Job Lounge. I think one of the things that it has turned into more of a student functional space. It used to be the kids would watch TV, and that's about all they do there. It wasn't utilized unless it was for the blood drive or some sort of student activity. Now it's utilized as a meeting place, as an eating place, and it really is getting the use that it deserves.
Absolutely. I was wondering if you might want to talk about, I know you've mentioned some, but are there any other little-known facts about some of the buildings that you've either constructed, overseen the construction of, or overseen the remodeling?
I think that this building here, I think that you don't realize the sound efforts that went into it. The split-face block is not here for any other reason than for the sound control. The reason that you have split-face block is that the irregular surface does not reflect the sound waves. And the block is put on neoprene so that you don't get the vibration that transfers. And then, as I said before, the block is filled with mortar, which is unusual. Usually they only do that when the block is structural. But it was done to give it the mass. The ductwork in this building was oversized so that you don't hear the whistling of the ductwork. The curtains that can close in the main Blizzard Theater, they have settings for jazz, for orchestra, for singing. And they're automatic. You just push a button and they close to different settings. The band shell comes down and then closes around. There's what they call a set, which is what they put the different stage shows and stage productions are every foot on the stage, and there are 3 trap doors that are on the stage so that they can have different productions. There was originally going to be maple on the floor, but they wanted it to be a lower quality wood so that they could pound nails into it. I reluctantly agreed one time to allow ComEd to shut the air conditioning off because it was a very hot day and they were getting brownouts. And we shut the air conditioning off in this building and it warped the floor. And I had to get replace quite a bit of the floor. And that wasn't one of my better ideas. The portable seating in the second space was too heavy for the floor, so we had to put an extra inch of plywood on the floor. Then we had to put transition strips at the doorway so that you wouldn't trip to roll around on that. The orchestra lift is one of the neatest engineering ideas I've ever seen. It compresses down to about a foot, but yet can lift a full-size orchestra on the lift. It's like a giant slinky, and it's finally gotten to a point where they have to have somebody come out and replace the Gala Lift Company out of Montreal, and it was one of the neater things I ever saw. The F building, the ICT, was a capital development board project, and they actually let the contractor build the interior walls before the exterior walls. Then they had to pay the contractor to winter protect the project, where if they would have insisted that they do it like normal, where the contractor build the exterior walls first, they would have just had to pay the contractor to infill the walls with plastic. The BIC project was going to have a lot more brick around the theater, but unfortunately that was too expensive, so they used a product that was also used in the VPAC project, which was called Zolatone, which was a spatter paint that was on the plaster that kind of looks like marble, but it's a neat looking product, but it's almost impossible to patch. We had an excellent painter, and I'm sure they have a good painter now, but even he had a tough time patching the paint. When they moved the machine tool department from the ATC, which is the G building, into the O building, some of the equipment weighed about, well, over a ton, and we had to roll it down the cantilevered hallway. And I was afraid that the cantilever would not hold up under the weight of the machine tools, and I found out that when they previously moved them in, that they used shoring through some of the ductwork grates, and so we hired a rigger to do a similar thing. So we actually put shoring in the floor to upgrade the ductwork, so that we could roll it down the corridor and not have it collapse on the floor. Also in the Business Conference Center, we took a vacant shelf space classroom and turned it into a baking kitchen that could do about 300 pizzas an hour or something like that. And then when we did the new culinary arts kitchen, we hired what I like to say were a bunch of hillbillies that came and took the old one out and just about ruined it, taking it out and putting it in the new baking kitchen. And that building's got about $400,000 worth of sound system, because you can have cameras show cooking demonstrations. And we had a squirrel that had a propensity to eat AV wires, and it ate way more than what a squirrel is worth of AV equipment before we finally trapped it and got rid of it. So that was unfortunate. And that part of the baking kitchen in that building was part of the plastics classroom. And that tells you a little bit about what, how things change when at one time we had a plastics program and we had electronics program. And, times change when we don't need those kind of programs. We had I believe the aviation program at one time here also. Things change. I know that they say that there are, employment opportunities that'll be in 5 years that they haven't even thought of now. I remember going to a conference where they said that, that campuses were totally Wi-Fi, and I just thought that was incredible that they could have Wi-Fi throughout their buildings, and now we are there, and it came quickly. When I first started, fiber optic was like magic. There was only one or two electricians in the whole state that knew how to do fiber optics, and it was very, very expensive. And now it's commonplace to where I'm sure there's 10 electricians within a 10-mile radius of the campus that can do fiber optics. During Y2K, we had cogeneration. We used to make our own electricity. The state, and part of the 1997 ICT project, put 4 Waukesha generators in our buildings, and we made 3.6 megawatts of power, which we could generate enough power to run the entire campus. And the reason they call it cogeneration was we made steam, and it would cool our buildings in the summer through absorption chillers, and heat our buildings through boilers in the wintertime. And we at Y2K, Cal Bird and I sat in the Job Lounge watching television to see if the world was ending in Australia and on the East Coast. And there was one time we smoked Cuban cigars and drank Diet Pepsi. We didn't dare drink a beer. And all of a sudden the door knocked, and we went, and it was Mike Shirley. And he came right before midnight to check on us, and that was one of the big hoaxes of all time. There was people that spent millions of dollars. Unfortunately, we had to spend about $250,000 on new building automation because our new building automation that we just bought 4 years prior didn't recognize the year 2000 either. But there was hospitals that had empty semis for waste and full semis of potable water, and everybody was all set for Y2K. The B building wing is built on a spring. It has a sump pump that runs all the time. It was hard to build that building. When we built the VPAC, the event center sewer ran right through the middle of the site. We had to support it during the whole time we were building it. Ran right through the orchestra lift site. We had to build a little support frame the entire time we were building it. Event center, the contractor hit the underground power for the cogeneration and almost melted his wheels when a group rented the field next to 466 Renner for a children's brain tumor event. Waste Management dropped a dumpster, and a guy hit the overhead line for the college, and hit the 13,000 volts for that and almost killed himself there. The closest we ever had to any construction guy dying was the guy putting in a modern fold door in the community room that stepped off the back of a 4-foot truck and hit his head and almost killed himself on a concussion. We had a guy just break his leg on the Health Careers building, and the rest of it has been pretty safe. We've been pretty lucky.
Speaking of safety, you have been responsible for providing much more safety for the students and staff of this college. And many of those are what one might consider your success stories. Your sprinklers, for example, have brought a lot of safety. What are some other things? Can you talk about some other things that have provided more safety for our students?
Well, I think you heard me talk about the tornado that I was in Owine. And actually, I was in a tornado when I lived in Ankeny that killed 3 people. So tornado safety has always been something in the back of my mind. And when I came to campus, I read our tornado safety program, and it said to spread out and tell people in outlying buildings that operations and maintenance people will do that. Well, I knew that tornadoes can travel up to 40 miles per hour. So if we saw a tornado in the wetlands, there was no way that any individual could run that fast, nor would I ask them to do that, because I wouldn't ask anybody to do something that I wouldn't do. I also knew that the junior high that was only half a block from me was totally demolished, and that brick buildings are probably the most dangerous buildings of any kind in a tornado, because a tornado will actually create a negative pressure, and brick buildings actually will implode. The brick will be found on the outside of the building because they will not deflect. They'll actually implode because they don't have any kind of give to them. And so I knew that wasn't a good thing. So I started off with deciding to have CB radios in all the dean's offices and the box office, child care, and when we had voicemail, have that send out. Well, if you come to this campus at 7 o'clock on a typical Tuesday night, there is 10,000 people here. Could be if there's a event or whatever. There are no deans here. There are no people that could be warned. And the tornado that hit Ankeny came after 10 o'clock at night, and they can come at night, especially in the Midwest on a severe hot night. So I started discussing with our fire alarm distributor what else could we do, and he said that we could start making announcements over our fire alarm system with a Wheelock tornado warning system. And with just a little bit of modification, we could add speakers in buildings that did not have addressable fire alarm systems. And when I say addressable fire alarm systems, those are systems that have horns and speakers with them. And so we got approval to upgrade the fire alarm. And the fire alarms, when I first got here, we had a lot of false alarms, and people were to a point where they were not paying attention to them. The firemen were totally disgusted with us because people wouldn't leave. They'd continue to play pinball, video games. The staff wouldn't leave because we were having 1 or 2 a month. And besides that, they would be in one building, an alarm, and the alarms would go off in 3 or 4 buildings. They weren't isolated to the building where the alarm went off. So Calberta and I also started looking at upgrading the fire alarm system to more modern appliances or more modern speakers and detectors, and isolating the buildings to where only the building that was alarmed would have the speakers go up. So anyway, we got the money to do that, and also to go with the tornado warning system. And then we got even more sophisticated to where we got a microphone that we could make announcements. And this became even more critical when we started having the problem with active shooters. And we were way ahead of the curve when we were in a situation where you would need to make an announcement and talk to people about needing to evacuate buildings. The other thing was that we started putting speakers on the outside of buildings and strobes on the outside of buildings because people were upset that nobody would tell them when to go back into buildings when the fire alarm was cleared. And I started giving tornado and fire and bomb scare training to new employees, and I did that for about 5 years. Fire extinguisher training on what to do, and that if the strobes were still flashing, that you shouldn't go back in the building, that they would clear the horns so that the firemen could talk, but not they wouldn't clear the strobes until the danger was cleared. So that was something that I take a lot of pride in. And then we started looking at other things we could do. And one of the things that I read about was putting room numbers on the inside of doors so that if you ran into a room, if there was an active shooter, you would know what room you're in if you needed to make a cell phone call. And that was very cheap. I mean, that's a little 2-inch by 3-inch vinyl room number, and we continue with that. The other thing was thumb turn locks on all the classroom doors, so that if you would have an active shooter, you didn't need to have a lock on the inside of the door. You wouldn't have to have a key if you did run in, if you saw an active shooter. Then, the other thing that I was proactive about was I helped write the chemical hygiene plan. I was active in writing the bloodborne pathogen safety plan and getting the custodians trained on that, which they didn't have the kits on how to clean up, if there was any kind of bloodborne pathogen, lockout, tagout. We got the proper training and the proper kits for the building engineers. Same with different things like confined space, personal protective equipment. So I wrote all those safety plans that we had. I helped push the safety committee, which I was chair of for a number of years, to get a training officer, and Diane Peterson was hired to do that. She was then kind of whisked away to HR, but then Sandy Brown was hired to do that. Now she is doing that full time, and she's actually got a couple of people that she has that now send out alerts on severe weather, and so that I'm very proud of. That I helped make the campus safe. We've changed out all the parking lot lights. If the lights used to go out, it would take 15 minutes for the lights to come back on, if they were sodium or mercury. Now they're LED, and we have emergency generators, so if the lights go out, the students leave to go to their cars. And we have tornado drills, and we have fire drills, and people take this a lot more serious. They actually have CERT training to make sure that people take that stuff serious. So,
can we move now to some of the people that you've worked with? Any staff members, any administrators that are particularly memorable that you have, and any anecdotes that you'd like to share about any of them?
Well, I think that we have to start with the guy that I started the very first day that I was on campus, and that's Dr. Mike Shirley. It's a little bit of a problem comparing him with other of the presidents, because he was a personal friend of mine, and he still is a personal friend of mine. I still keep in contact with him even when he is retired. I think we have a lot in common. He was an engineer. I mean, as a Naval Academy grad, those guys are mechanical engineers. So we kind of have the same thought process. I think he was very supportive of the operations and maintenance department, being a CFO for 20 years before he became the president. And he was my boss for 7 years, I think. And he was always very protective of making sure that we had capital outlay plan money to spend on upgrading facilities and upgrading different items like roofs and mechanical items. So I would say that we have the same kind of humor, and I always respected his wit. I can't compare to his intelligence, and I know he's loves to read books. I'd like to be on par with that, but I really respect him, and so I think he's probably the number one reason that I switched from construction. There are a lot of people that were on his staff that were good people. Joni Lash, his admin assistant, she could type 125 words a minute. I've never seen anything like it. I was told that the old IBM Selectrics actually would sometimes jam up because she was so fast on it, and that she didn't really like the first computers because she didn't like how they worked. And she was a stitch when she and Mike worked together. And then you have to look at his staff. Lisa Johnson is the only one left. She's actually been here longer than me. She's the director of the child care. She's just a sweetheart of a person and a great asset to the college. Rich Cervantes, who was the director of security, he was a great guy. Barb Dorman, Jeff Metzger, Linda Kem, just really a good group of people that were long-term ECC employees, and I think that Mary Chaya, I don't think, there at one time she was like the second longest acting administrator in the whole ICCB or ICCA in the whole state, and so that sort of commitment to the college was apparent in his staff. I look at other people, Amy Beth Maurer and Katie Story, Relay for Life. I helped them in 2003 with the first one when Katie was still a student. My mother died of cancer in 2003, which was kind of ironic. And Katie always recognized my mother and always gave me, I think, too much credit for helping them with it. They did all the work. And then Project Backpack that they've continued, which I think is great. Then I had a group of friends that I played basketball with for 20 years until I had knee surgery. Bill Colton, Dave Prose, Mike Garrett, David Della Fuentes, Roger Spire, who's now the HR director at Harper. It was kind of a good group in that, with the divisions in the college with faculty, administration, and support staff, we kind of overlooked that and, what was in the locker room, which I'll have a couple anecdotes in the future in just a couple minutes that'll show that. But we really had a bond of playing Tuesday, Thursdays at lunch, and then in the wintertime we played Saturdays in the morning. And Tony Mixa, who's now a president in a college in Tennessee, he was in the group. It was really something that I think was a good thing for the college. Melissa Tate is the managing director of business services. That's a very tough job, and there's a lot of people that have criticism for her, but like Mary Chaya, I think she's about as ethical a person that we have at the college. She's hardworking. She's under a real tremendous amount of stress. I have a lot of respect for her. I guess just as a general note, I was surprised by the quality of teachers. When I was growing up and in high school, Ankeny's got a large community college. Des Moines Area Community College is right outside Ankeny. And, I always thought that community colleges, going to a large university like Iowa State, I kind of looked down my nose at community colleges, but I was totally wrong. Because I had, 300 people in my sociology and psychology class, and I had 150 in my physics and chemistry large lectures. And then I would have teaching assistants that had trouble with speaking English. And here you have no more than 30 in your classes, and you have people with Ivy League degrees and people with Big Ten degrees, and they're with doctorate degrees, and you don't have labs taught by teaching assistants. You have your labs taught by the same people that teach your lectures. And, we have better facilities than a lot of these colleges do. And I just feel bad that I had that feeling. And I've noticed from talking to a lot of people in the community that I know that their children are coming back, that they're going to other colleges and they're taking credits here in the summer because they know that they can get their credits for electives a lot cheaper, but they're not getting really a cheaper education, as in they're getting a less of an education. They're getting it for less cost. And I think that that's something that I guess I'm sad that I didn't realize until I came here. The other thing is that the quality of people that I've supervised over the years, the custodians, the Jovel Villagomez, the Fidencio Felix Garcias, the Fernando Rios, the Maria Vargas, who quit because her son was hit by a car, the Raquel Herrera that worked, 6 days a week as an administrator for me, the groundskeepers that come in at, midnight and work, 24 hours straight to clear the snow. It's just, it's something that they always made me look good. We won several awards, and we always had, in the employee surveys, we always had 95% to 96% satisfaction, actually good to excellent. And, it was always because of them. And people like Jovel, I never saw that guy ever sit down. I came around the corner, in the strangest places that he'd be working, and I never saw him breaking and goofing off. And I don't think I ever saw a union worker be that vigilant, and that we're making twice as much money as he was, or 3 times. And guys like Felix Garcia, that I found out was, working at Elgin City Hall after working here 60 hours a week. I mean, it's just unbelievable, the work ethic that these people had. Then your anecdotes. I think that one of the things that we had fun with that basketball group was some of the practical jokes that we had. And, some of them I can share and some I can't. And a couple of ones that were actually funny was, one was Dr. Bruce Austin, who was one of the guys that actually played college basketball. And unfortunately, his back and knees didn't allow him to play as much as he would have liked, or as much as we would have liked, because we liked it when we had staff and faculty and didn't have to bring in kids and students to play against. But Bruce, because he played infrequent, he forgot the combination to his padlock, and so he went to the athletic director's office and got the bolt cutter and cut the lock off his locker, only to find out he missed by one locker and cut a student's locker lock off. And so he had to buy the student a new lock. So being the smart alecks that we are, we put Bruce Austin's locker on a piece of tape and stuck it to his locker. And then we waited about 3 or 4 weeks and put it on the locker next to his. So then he went to try to unlock the locker, and he couldn't believe it. He was like, "Come on, man, this can't be happening again." And so then he went to get the bolt cutter, and right as he was getting ready to cut the lock off again, we spilled the beans and told him that we had pulled a joke on him. And he has an infectious laugh, and he laughed good with the rest of us. And the second one is one of the greatest practical jokes of all time. Bill Colton, who actually started playing basketball with me in 1992, we played when I was building the Performing Arts Center. Actually, I took a phys ed class so I could play basketball, and we would play with the project engineer and one of our superintendents against Dennis Lynch and Bill. But Bill was a Vietnam War veteran, and Dennis Lynch was a world traveler, and on one of his travelers sometime in the 2000s, he happened to be in Hanoi, Vietnam, and he got himself a postcard and sent to Bill. He knew Bill's address because they both lived in Crystal Lake, and said, Papa San Colton, me your number one son, and knew when Bill was in Vietnam, and said, me, 25 years old or whatever it would have been, me your number one son, me come and visit you. And sent it to him postmarked from Hanoi, which would have been pretty hard to do anywhere but from Hanoi, and sent it to Bill. Fortunately, Bill took it in good stride, and Pat, his wife, must have taken good stride. I don't know if Joyce would have, but that was a pretty good story. And then finally, my last one was Dr. Flores, who wasn't the most beloved president. One staff meeting, we were sitting around Dr. Shirley's office when in the old SRC-B administration wing, when Mike had a really big conference table that eventually was in my office, and Dr. Flores was upset about something and came in and chewed us all out, which I thought was a little inappropriate. But anyway, when he got done chewing us out, he wheeled and walked right into Mike's coat closet. He determined that he was in the coat closet, came out, and shot us a dirty look, and then walked out of Mike's office. And the staff of Mike's, we tried to hold our laughter as long as we could, but we know that he probably heard us laugh after getting chewed out. But it was pretty funny at the time. So,
absolutely. This is 2016, and you will be retiring at the end of this year. What are your plans for retirement?
Well, I plan on fixing up our house that my wife and I bought on the east side of Elgin, and we're going to sell it and hopefully design a lake home. We bought 3 acres and 425 feet of lakefront on Spider Lake chain near Hayward, Wisconsin. Going to hopefully put a few sustainable ideas, depending on how much it costs, into that. And I'd like to fish and golf and read and hunt and just relax as soon as we can. We would like to travel some. My wife's parents are 89 and 90, and they're still living on their farm in southwest Minnesota, so I'm sure we'll be spending a good bit of time there also. But it's something that we are looking forward to. We put a lot of hard work into planning for it, and hopefully our health will hold up and we'll have some good years ahead of us. So.
That's great. You have spent 22 years here at Elgin Community College. Do you have any final reflections on your 22 years?
Yeah. Well, I met some lifelong friends. I'm proud of what I left behind. I'm proud of the scholarship that my wife and I endowed. We endowed a ECC scholarship. I'm proud of the work that I did on the foundation. I won a national award. I was a ECC friend of the foundation that I won one year. I'm also proud whenever I drive on this campus and look around. I think that looking at the buildings that were there, I sometimes wonder if I had something like It's a Wonderful Life, if I could take a look at what this campus would look like if I never set foot on it, how much it would change, because I know I helped sell both referendums. I helped raise money to get both of them passed. I know I had some input in the Skyway Bridge and getting the event center and the athletic fields with the help of Rich Ney and John Duffy. So I'm proud of some of that stuff. I think I've left the campus in good shape as far as deferred maintenance. We've got 47 new roofs because of the referendum. We've got new parking lots. I think that this is actually now the oldest building that hasn't been remodeled, and it's 1993, 94, which I think if you asked a lot of community colleges and state universities if you told them that they had their oldest building was 1994, they'd be pretty envious. And we've replaced the carpet in public areas at least once in this building, and a lot of it needs to be updated, but it's in pretty good shape. And the next building would be F in 97, so that's only 10 years old. So I think that I'm leaving the place in pretty good hands and pretty good shape. I think with the money tightening that it's going to get to be not as nice of a scenario as far as deferred maintenance. So I think it's something that I think I'll be happy that I left in the good times. So I'm looking forward to retirement, and I'm very happy to know some great people, which include the both of you. So,
well, I thank you so much, Paul. You've given us, in part as part of this oral history, so much good information, and your life here at the college has been one of treating others with respect and treating others the way that they want to be treated. And we thank you.
Thank you.